Hello there, and this is not quite what you probably think it is. I am not reviving my artist profile concept here on YouTube, but what I am going to do is, especially if the availability and the awkwardness is going to be more even in terms of setting this up, I am going to be doing tributes to artists that specifically mean a lot to me or that have since passed on. And this is going to be my first of my special artist profile tributes, which are going to be happening very, very few and far between, I will tell you that. But I decided to revive this concept in a much, much, much more smaller fashion. And today I am going to be paying tribute to Mr. Luther Vandross. He passed away about 9 years ago of complications from hypertension and diabetes, a heart condition that had developed. And he would have been 63 years old today had he lived. Now, Luther Vandross was a very dynamic figure. He spent most of the 1970s as a background vocalist for everybody from Chaka Khan, Bette Midler, Diana Ross, David Bowie, and Barbra Streisand, as well as Donna Summer. As a matter of fact, he produced 2 albums during the height of his solo career for Aretha Franklin. He was known primarily for singing background with female singers, and around 1980 he joined up with the European R&B funk band called Change, and his appearance on their song The Glow of Love became very prominent after it was sampled on Janet Jackson's 2001 hit All For You. And that earned Luther a contract with Epic Records in 1981, and the end result was this album, Never Too Much. I actually have this in my favorite CD bin. It's a wonderful album, produced with the help of Mr. Marcus Miller, bassist, producer extraordinaire. Never Too Much, Sugar and Spice, I've Been Working, She's a Super Lady, have tremendous power as up-tempo funk songs with a slightly sophisticated edge to them, and Luther's gospel-powered vocals throughout. Of course, A House Is Not a Home is the style that he really became known for in the 80s, somewhat of a big ballad singer. But I see Luther as a very diverse figure and very important to the 80s, therefore, because of that nature. This is the inside of that CD. The next album he released was 1982's Forever, For Always, For Love. This album tended to go for the ballads and the genuine shuffle beat kind of rhythm and blues sound, revivalism, which made sense, you know. Ronald Reagan wanted America to return to traditional values, and I think to some degree, you know, a lot of soul R&B artists flipped that around and started going back to more traditional styles of R&B as well, and this kind of represents that. Luther mixes his own song Bad Boy with Sam Cooke's Having a Party for a medley. A great party rhythm and blues number to start out the album. It's really a great album. It's very much like his first in a lot of ways. Really typifies a Luther Vandross sound. Sorry for the broken case, but there's Luther again. This is one of my favorite Luther Vandross albums, because this really embraces a style that Marcus Miller was using very prominently at the time, of what I call boogie funk. A friend of mine, who's a keyboardist of some note, tried calling that number when they had the vinyl album. Of course, it isn't really Luther's. And there's some amazing boogie on this. I Want Your Love, I'll Let You Slide, For the Sweetness of Your Love. Very Smokey Robinson-like lyrics on this one. And Busybody is kind of a nice, you know, mid-tempo, proto-New Jack kind of groove. That's the on the inside of the album as well if you open it up. Wonderful album from 1983. The next album might be very well my favorite Luther Vandross album, because it is very much in the spirit of a full-on album rather than a collection of songs just here, there, two unrelated put together. And it's called The Night I Fell in Love. This returns to the more traditional R&B style of Luther Vandross's first 2 albums in 81 and 2. It doesn't particularly sound like 1985, and I think that's part of the great quality of it. He does an excellent version of Stevie Wonder's Creepin', and Till My Baby Comes Home. You can imagine Sam Cooke recording a song like that in 1985. Great up-tempo soul and R&B, sung by a master of his craft. The next album is Give Me the Reason from 1986. He starts out with one of my favorite Luther Vandross songs, Stop the Love, which is really total gospel, choir, updated, secular music in the Ray Charles tradition. Almost to the point where it's just that old story of, in order to make it secular, they just changed Jesus to baby. Okay. That being said, this is a fantastic album. Again, more contemporary, kind of boogie-oriented, with songs such as So Amazing, I Really Didn't Mean It, and there's a duet with Gregory Hines on here called There's Nothing Better Than Love. This album is one of my favorite Luther Vandross records, actually. It has all the things that made him wonderful vocally and musically as a producer and writer. Not only that, but throughout this album, the grooves are all really strong. Even the ballads have a groove to them, and that's what I like about that. This album came out in 1988. He wasn't really enjoying the pop success that a lot of people thought he deserved, but it didn't really matter too much because the R&B charts had him eating out of their hands at this point. She Won't Talk to Me is another nice up-tempo song. This album is getting a little bit smoothed out and Anita Baker-ish, although he does that well, because I think he was hoping to have some chart success during this time. A little bit of a step down in quality from Give Me the Reason, but it's still, Luther Vandross's, somewhat lesser albums are better than a lot of other people's keepers. The next album came out in 1991, and it's called Power of Love. Now, Power of Love, Love Power, was kind of a gospel New Jack Swing number, and this album is very much of 1991, that era before hip-hop, New Jack kind of productions completely dominated R&B. There's still a lot of early 90s, late 80s house elements to it. Again, one of my favorite Luther Vandross albums. I think it's really underrated as a record. Never Let Me Go from 1993. Okay, by this time, he's pretty much starting to recycle himself, and this album sounds a little bit too much like Power of Love to be comfortable, but it's a sound that worked, and he maintained it for a little while. This is one of the only 90s albums I have by him. A lot of people think he got very repetitive during this era, but again, it's Luther, and his talent hasn't diminished. The next album is a cover album of songs that he just called songs. Luther Vandross, as you can see, lost a lot of weight during this period. There's a lot of yo-yo weight loss in Luther's history, unfortunately, which I think led to his premature passing at age 54. That being said, he had a hit from this album of Heat Waves, Always and Forever. And I think he had another album in the 90s I don't have. My Luther Vandross collection is somewhat incomplete, but he re-emerged after the new millennium with this album, Luther Vandross, released on J Records. This album has a bit of a modern-day neo-soul R. Kelly feel about it. Some attempts at being contemporary, but it did bring him back into the spotlight. Came out in 2001, around the time of Alicia Keys. Now this is Luther's swan song, Dance with My Father. Another album in the same vein. A good mixture of ballads and up-tempo tunes, but still distinctly Luther. Let me show you the inside of the CD. Unfortunately, we'll have to do with this as being his last work, because he's no longer with us. So, that's my tribute to Luther Vandross, and all of the artists that he has touched over the years, and the fact that his influence has since influenced artists who themselves have become influential. So, everybody out there, enjoy your music, and I will see you next time.